Please meet Jacob. Hi, Jacob.
Hi, Anat.
Do you like to... do you like to introduce yourself?
Me?
Yes.
Of course. Thank
Just
you. Thank you for letting me introduce myself. Hi, everybody. This is Jacob speaking. I'm a member of CIMI as a volunteer, and I'm very happy to meet with you. I didn't have the chance to see you on the first time, but now I'm here. And I would be glad to answer if you have any questions or you would like to ask a person with experience in being with a caregiver with my mother-in-law. Here I am. Thank you and wish you good luck.
Thank you, Jacob. Okay, everyone. I'm here. You can begin with today's meeting.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As you remember, my name is Sarah, and I'm going to discuss some important issues today following this presentation that we have here on screen. And I hope you had a restful weekend and enjoyed, as I said, this in-between time. Our Corona time has presented us with special events like in-between time. And hopefully that you've taken the opportunity to perhaps make friends, make acquaintances, and settled in and make yourself comfortable and so on. So today I'd like to speak about building and developing the relationship with the patient or with the client, as I like to say. And we talked a little bit about that last time. Today I'd like to go into more detail about what entails building a relationship and how, of course, it is very important in our care work. So building and developing a relationship with the patient involves several steps. Yes, can you hear me? סליחה, תודה. Okay, here we go. Building and developing a relationship with the patient involves steps, and I'll be speaking about each one of them, but we can see that caregiving, creating good communication is obviously the most important part, and coordination of expectations, building trust, creating the caregiving alliance, and taking into account social and cultural components. So the first step is, of course, creating good communication. Without good communication, it's very difficult to build any kind of a relationship. And we like to think about relationships and communication as being in different categories. And they will be presented. Every person has a unique communication style, a way in which they interact and exchange information with others. There are 4 basic communication styles that I'll be speaking about: passive, aggressive, passive-aggressive, and assertive. It's important to understand each communication style and why individuals use them. For example, the assertive communication style has been found to be the most effective because it incorporates the best aspects of all the other styles. When we break down these 4 styles, we'll better understand the characteristics of each style, standard phrases, and what makes them unique. So we'll begin with the passive communicators, often display a lack of eye contact, poor body posture, and an inability to say no. Passive communicators also act in a way that states people never consider my feelings, and passive communicators are also easy to get along with as they follow orders and go with the flow. But if you're a passive communicator, you're usually very frustrated because you don't speak your mind and because no one can really know what you're feeling and what you're thinking. So being a passive communicator, in some cultures, this may be interpreted as being polite, it may be interpreted as being respectful, but usually it's also the kind of a behavior that someone may even try to take advantage, whether it's the client or the caregiver or someone else in your vicinity, then it's hard to care for. what you think, what you feel, if you understand what's happening around you, and so on. So this would generally not be recommended as a good way. The aggressive communication style is leading voice, maintaining intense eye contact, and dominating or controlling others by blaming, intimidating, criticizing, threatening, or attacking them, among other ways. So this obviously is not a very pleasant way to communicate, not for the person who is communicating and not for the person who is, listening or being in the other part of the communication. So usually if a person is communicating in this manner, we tend to think that he's angry, he's upset, he's suffering some kind of discomfort, something is annoying him, and so on. And when a person behaves in this way, usually we don't really listen. We respond automatically to the tone and to the anger that he's projecting, and usually people tune out. So this obviously is also not a very good way of communicating. Then we have the passive-aggressive communicator. Passive-aggressive communication style users appear passive on the surface, but within he or she may feel powerless or stuck, building up a resentment that leads to seething or acting out in subtle, indirect, and secret ways. Most passive-aggressive communicators will mutter to themselves rather than confront a person or an issue. They have difficulty acknowledging their anger, use facial expressions that don't correlate with how they feel, and even deny there is a problem. So again, being a passive-aggressive communicator is also not very good way to communicate, because you don't really express your true feelings or thoughts. And basically, as we said, on the surface you seem to agree, but on the inside you really don't. And so there's this conflict, this dissonance between the way you behave and the way you think. And obviously this does not lead to good communication. And our last choice is to be assertive. Assertive communicators can express their own needs, desires, ideas, feelings, while also considering the needs of others. One of the key assertive communications is using the I statement, such as, I feel frustrated when you are late for a meeting, or I don't believe having to explain this over and over again. It indicates ownership of feeling and behaviors without blaming the other person. I highly recommend that you adopt, this kind of behavior for yourself. And also, when you encounter people that don't communicate in this way, that you calmly try to encourage them to do so. So basically, when you project and display and talk about the way you think and feel in an honest, open way, this is the best way to communicate. So to sum it up, let's say again, the passive communicators is emotionally dishonest, indirect, inhibited, self-denying, blaming, and apologetic. The passive-aggressive is emotionally dishonest, indirect, self-denying, at first self-enhancing, at the expense of others later. The aggressive is inappropriately honest, direct, expressive, attacking, blaming, controlling, self-enhancing at the expense of others. And the assertive is appropriately aggressive, self-confident, empathetic to emotions of all individuals. So that's the green one. That's the one we try to achieve for ourselves and to encourage others to communicate in that way. Tools for effective communication. Understanding how others communicate can be the key to effective communication styles. Here are a few tips to keep in mind. Take ownership, use the I statement. I highly encourage you to take heart in this short recommendation, especially in Israel, where our way of communication, as I've said before, is usually may appear to be, aggressive or even I wouldn't say violent, but very assertive. And so it's very important not to come across as being a passive communicator, because you may be taken in a direct and honest way. It may be misunderstood for agreeing or complying to, things that you don't agree or want to comply to. So using the I statement, say, I agree, I don't agree, I think, I feel, is a very important way to communicate. Maintain eye contact if you feel comfortable with it, but you must understand that this is very acceptable here in Israel. In other cultures, it may not be. It may be considered to be too bold or not polite. But yes, I do encourage you to maintain eye contact with your client for several reasons. Number one, it encourages direct communication. And also, if a person doesn't hear well, doesn't see well, is not, entirely in charge of the language that you're supposed to be using together in communicating. And perhaps you're using, trying to read each other's body language. So maintaining eye contact is a very, very important tool in communicating well. Voice your needs and desires confidently. And don't forget to smile. Yes, this is the most important part, smiling. I think you all agree that smile is the most important part in any communication skill. And when you start at each and every conversation or interaction with a smile, you've already gained that much more of your goals. And there is no language barrier to smiles, obviously. So I highly encourage you to do it. Even if you're confused, you're frustrated, this is one of the very most important tools in our toolbox as professional caregivers, smiling. I'll just say briefly that smiling has an incredible biological and neurological effect on the person who smiles. And I think it also has that effect on the person who you're smiling to. So let's all smile. All right. Big smile. Nice.
Good smile.
Absolutely.
Cost nothing.
How to deal with aggressive behavior and language. This is difficult, especially when you're not sure about a language or a culture and you're new in this situation. This is, right here is a YouTube presentation that you can look at your own time that may have some important tips on how to deal with people that behave aggressively or speak that way, communicate that way. I would assume that if a person is on a regular basis aggressive in his language and in his behavior, that there's something wrong, and that it would be good to advise other family members of some other situation that's going on, perhaps pain, perhaps something else. And this is not a regular way that people communicate. On occasion is one thing, but if it's a regular, then I highly recommend that you seek advice. Of course, there is the nonverbal communication, which is so important for all of us. And again, the more sensitive we are, the more minded we are about ourselves, about our body language, and about body language of others, the more we are becoming a skilled caregiver. So let's talk about that a little bit. Along with the 4 communication styles, there's also the nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication is any way in which people can transfer information between them without the use of words, from the spoken, written, or sign language. Nonverbal communication is expressed in facial expressions, body language. Closed hands indicate closure, tone of voice, physical gestures, standing, and touching. I think we all know that all of those gestures and facial expressions and so on are very important, and the information that we transfer to the people that are around us, if we're tense, if we're anxious, if we're, if we're in pain, if we are impatient, all of those things are very, very obvious usually to the people around us. And so being aware of the way that we come across to others, I think will also help us in understanding what people, what our client, especially in the family that he's with, are also trying to communicate to us, even if we don't have the regular language skills. I always try to think of, a pet, a dog, or a cat that we have in home. Obviously, I don't think that all of the animals can learn all the different languages, German, Hebrew, Spanish, and so on, English, but they do understand what we communicate to them, right? If it's in command form, if it's in a different tone of, our tone of voice, the structure of the sentence, the how loud or soft we speak, and so on and so forth. And the music that is, in our tone of voice, all of those things are very important in communication. And I highly advise that we be very sensitive to the way we come across and the way we behave, non-verbally, obviously, and also that will help us to understand our client or patient. I want to put the emphasis also on touch and on smell and on all kinds of other sounds that are in the general area of the place that we are, and using smells and touch and music or other sounds to create a favorable environment or a calming environment for our client and for our patient is very, very recommended and highly effective. I think that we all know how people respond to music and smells that feel good and so on and so forth. Part of our professional tools, all of those things that may be simple, but are very important when we're dealing with disabled people. So tools for effective communication, active listening, find out what is your patient's opinions, thoughts, and emotions, and try not to make assumptions, and very importantly, don't make judgments. They feel, they think this is, their beliefs, their history has brought them to these conclusions or whatever. You don't have to agree, but being a professional is obviously not trying to, to argue or whatever. This is theirs. And the more we know about them, the easier it is for us to communicate and to deal with whatever it is that's in their, heart and soul. Reflection. In order to make sure you understood what your patient meant, try to reflect that you understood what he said by saying, I understand, I see, and ask questions. Is that what you meant? I also recommend that, in the speech form, especially when there is a language barrier, assuming that English is not their mother tongue, or perhaps not yours as well, that, you repeat their words. And in that way, people get the feeling that they have been heard, and what they said has been communicated. And of course, ask many questions, as many as possible, for you to understand what it is that they're trying to communicate to you. Empathy. Try to empathize with your patient, even if you don't agree with them. Very important. If they're in pain, if they're happy, if they're, if they're stressed, whatever, trying to understand their emotional state is very important in communication and also in building relationships. Nonverbal communication, while talking to a patient, maintain eye contact, try to speak at eye level, not above him. Relax your speech, calm your tone of speech. I want to speak again about eye level. When you're talking to someone, or when you're doing any kind of activity with someone that is your client, I highly recommend that you stay at his eye level, not above him. He will usually be sitting or laying down, and so you position yourself in front of him, in front of his face, not in back of him, not on top of him, and obviously not below him. But very important to take a chair or whatever, and to be eye level, okay? This also gives a calming kind of an attitude and much better communication. So I invite you to discuss, to bring up, to talk, to voice your opinions about, what I've said. What is your communication style? What is, in your opinion, the best communication style? What can you do to with your patient who has communication style that is difficult to handle? Which concern do you have about your own patient's communication style? Anything that's related to, building relationship and the way we communicate. Of course, this is something that we can always change. And again, learning the language of Hebrew or what other language is being spoken in the home is going to be, of course, a very important step for you. Would anyone like to tell us what my talk has presented in their thoughts, or anyone have an experience they'd like to share with us? I know some of you have worked abroad and have taken care of disabled people, whether in the Philippines or abroad, and perhaps you'd like to give us some tips on situations where you've overcome communication difficulties. Anyone?
If you like, you can ride on the jet, if you prefer.
Yes, that would be nice also.
Maybe also from the experience at home, if somebody had experience with a grandparent or with a family member, that would be also a good experience to hear about.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, this is Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi. So the first question is, what is your communication style? Probably for me, it might vary depending on the person that I'm talking to. But like what you have mentioned, we need to practice assertive kind of communication, most especially for us, because we are going to work on our patient. And we know that they might be experiencing some problems through health or whatnot. So we have to how sometimes if you're in pain, if the person is in pain, they might not feel comfortable. And then the second question is, what is your opinion, the best communication style? So for me, like what you have mentioned, being assertive is the best one. And then what can you do if your patient has a communication style that is difficult to handle? Probably what we have to do is to calm down, stay in focus, and then if the patient is venting out or saying something, we really have to listen. We just have to stay quiet, and then afterwards, when they feel okay, probably that's the time that we need to speak with them. Another one is, which concern do you have about your patient communication concern? Probably it's going to be a big adjustment for me, because this is going to be the very first time that I'm going to be working with someone abroad. And I really don't know yet how to speak on the native language. So probably there might be a challenge for me that I will encounter when it comes to communicating with them. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Catherine. You're very yet you've talking. Yes, scale. Who knows? Talk a little bit about making expectations. Meeting expectations of styles. Being assertive is it's a balancing act. On the one hand, you want to be assertive in order for the person, the most precious part of their family, in your hands, and you must be able to handle it. So being assertive is important, so they can trust you and have confidence in your abilities and so on. On the other hand, you don't want to come across as being too bossy or too taking over. And so very sensitive to all of those cues. I invite someone else if they want to share about an experience or their thoughts. Anyone? Any one of the gentlemen in our group like to say something?
Is there anyone who remembered that at some point in their life, they had to work on their communication style? You remember? Maybe in the past? Not lately?
Okay, guys, we can continue to our next subject if there's no one else that'd like to comment at this point, but you are welcome to write your comments and we can come back to this a little later. And again, here is a YouTube presentation, 10 tips for communicating with the elderly. And you're, of course, invited to see if there's something that you can benefit from these YouTube presentations. So the next step in good communication or in building a communication attitude with your client or patient involves coordinating expectations. Obviously, very first thing that you do when you start a new job or you're in a new situation, everybody says what they expect from each other, and this makes an open door for good communication. So when starting a new job and starting a new relationship, each side has expectations, hopes, and concerns. Try to have an open conversation with the patient and his family about their needs and expectations. It's important that you also express your needs and expectations and try to be honest and open and willing to learn. It's very important. You're on a high learning curve. Everything is new, everything is different. And very important that you ask questions and that you, and you allow your client or family to, to teach you. Some things may be very obvious to them. Oh, how come she does it like this? It's obvious that you must do it differently and so on. Not to be upset. Don't take it personally. If you're being criticized, not to take it personally. If you make mistakes, not to be insulted. You make note and you do better the next time, obviously. Sometimes people don't understand that they must give instructions. It seems obvious to them that the way they do things is the way everybody does things. But that's not necessarily so, as we already know. I want to say something about expectations. I think that very often, in terms of your client and perhaps for yourself as well, we don't really know what our expectations are until we're in the situation ourselves, okay? So I'm assuming that, your client and his family is very much in need of assistance on a regular basis and very anxious to have a person come and, take the responsibility of the day-to-day caring. But this is something that must be discussed. And sometimes there are expectations and disappointments without even, being aware of why. So good communication, being open, talking about things is very important. I think that the one example that I'd like to tell you is about a family that I know that had a caregiver that worked for them for a very long time, for 1.5 years. And then when the caregiver said that they didn't want to stay anymore, the family was very surprised to hear why. And the woman said that she doesn't have a place to put her clothes, and she doesn't have a place to put her food, and she doesn't have a place to, she doesn't have proper cooling or heating in her room. And so the family says, why didn't you speak up about this before? These are basic things. We have no problem, providing for you. She said, well, I communicated with my client or patient and they were not responding, there was no response. So I waited patiently and I don't want to wait anymore. So what I want to say is you must be honest and also voice your needs, okay? So it's very important that obviously that you have a place to put your clothes and speak openly about food and about where to put your food. Some families, you know, if they're religious and they have restrictions about, you know, strangers being in their kitchen, touching things, unless, you know, they already know and trust you and so on. So all of those things must be discussed, obviously, for you to be comfortable. This is your space as well. And also talk about things that are not so obvious, where you would be expected to, you know, to sit in the living room, in the patio, in the garden, if you're just want to watch television or relax or speak on the phone or be in your room or within eye contact always of your client, or, you know, all of those things really should be discussed in an open manner, okay? And of course, must be agreed upon, yes? I want to talk about starting a new relationship and expectations. Sometimes the things are not said openly, okay? In terms of what your duties may be, obviously personal hygiene, perhaps, you know, cleaning the home and preparing food and shopping and so on and other issues. But if you feel that the family is making demands on you that are not part of your expectations, you know, in terms of other members of the family's needs and so on, then you must consult whoever it is that you should be consulting, maybe someone in the family and so on, in order to put borders on what is appropriate and what is not. Along the way, there may be changes in the patients or your expectations and needs, and it's okay as long as you speak about them. Okay, 52 months is a long time, and so there obviously will be changes, and it's very important to voice your needs, and also if your needs are in terms of facilities or appliances that will help you better take care of your client. I think you should know that in Israel, the health system is very good and is absolutely equipped to give you any kind of assisting appliances that you may need in order to make your home care process as efficient and as easy as possible, okay? There are all of those appliances necessary in order to take care of a disabled person at home. So if you have any kind of new needs, in order to take care of them or yourself, you must voice your needs. If you maintain good communication, you can always talk again openly about your patient's expectations and your expectations and re-coordinate them, okay? Always good communication is the key to all of that. So the next step, obviously, is building trust. What is involved in building trust? Reliability, sincerity, integrity, consistency, commitment, competence. All of those things are very important in building trust. I want to stop here for 5 minutes, have a 5-minute recess, allow everyone to kind of think about the things that I've talked about, and we'll continue in 5 minutes unless there's something that someone wants to say now. We'll come back in 5 minutes. Okay, Margareta?
Okay, Sarah.
Oh. Are we all here, Margareta? Everyone back?
Almost.
Okay. So I invite you all to comment if you'd like about expectations. And before we go on to talking about building trust, anyone like to comment about that? I'll just say that when we spoke before about values, someone mentioned that, you know, the best way to try to feel comfortable in the family that you're taking care of is, you know, to be part of the family. And again, this is about expectations. Sometimes the family would expect you to be part of the family, to participate in all family affairs, to participate, you know, they have Friday night dinners. That's, you know, the family comes together. This is a tradition in most families in Israel, not all, but, you know, most, to be part of that. And maybe not, maybe they would expect you not to be, you know, part of the family. Just be the caregiver and put your attention on the needs of the client and not necessarily participate in other affairs. So it all really depends on the family, and you must be minded to be sensitive and not to be insulted if this is how, you know, those are their expectations. And again, there may be some unrealistic expectations on the part of the family that would not be, you know, appropriate for you to comply with. And so again, all of these things must be discussed openly and agreed upon. Perhaps the client is thinking how lonely he is and how, you know, he's missing his wife or her husband, and now they won't be alone. Now there will be someone living in the home. Someone will be there for them and filling a big hole in their heart that's, you know, that they've lost important people in their life. And usually this isn't possible either, you know, because you are just a caregiver. You're not going to necessarily, you know, fill their heart with the love that they lost or, you know, anything else. So again, talking about and being aware and minded about expectations is a very big step in, you know, in having a good relationship. I invite you again, would anyone like to comment or, you know, share an experience in that respect from previous caregiving experiences? Someone that worked in someone's home in a personal way and had to deal with expectations that needed to be negotiated. You know, because when you're part of the family, if you're a son, a daughter, a neighbor, a cousin, whatever, usually we know in our community what expectations we can have or not have from people in those kind of relationships. But when we have a caregiver that comes into our home, this is a totally new kind of a role, you know, in our life cycle. And so it's on an individual basis to be discussed and built.
Ma'am, can I have something?
Please do.
For me, commitment is important because if you commit as a caregiver, you have to be true in all ways. Do it right, be organized, be attentive, especially on your patient. Focus on his or her medical condition. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Focusing on their needs is very important, but, you know, not just the medical ones, the psychological and emotional ones also. We may not be able to fill them all, but to know what they are would be helpful. Anyone else like to share or comment? So I'll continue and we'll talk a little bit more about building trust. As I said before, it involves reliability, sincerity, integrity, consistency, commitment, and competence. I think all of those make up our professional toolbox. So what is trust? Trust is one's willingness to be vulnerable to another based on the confidence that the other has goodwill, trustworthy, component, honest and openness. So if we want our client or patient or his family to trust us, then, you know, we must be able to instill in them the feeling of being trustworthy, right? Otherwise, they won't open up to us. And so this is very important. And of course, this you can achieve by being open about, you know, in yourself towards them. So I think part of that is perhaps sharing a little bit of your own life, of your own feelings, of your own experiences in the past. And that allows for, you know, mutual discussion and a shared belief that you can trust someone to achieve common goals. And the common goal is, of course, to take care of this person and for him to believe that you have his best interest at heart above everything else. At the base of trust, there are many elements. Respect for others. This is obvious. And I think respect for others is very important, especially if you're coming into someone's home and being minded and sensitive to everything that's in his home. This is a safe place. And in order for a person not to feel violated or abused, even in the slightest, it's very important not to move things, not to change things, to be sensitive to their rhythm of life. If they do things slowly, how they do things, you know, sort of like watching very carefully and trying to do or imitate the way things are done in their family and their home is very important, okay? Of course, to be sincere, to say what you mean and mean what you say. Integrity is very important. If you say something, do it. If you're not able to do something, explain yourself, give a reason. Being open, very important. To be, you know, someone that you can trust has to be someone open, not secretive, not, you know, talking behind your back or saying things that a person wouldn't understand that would give you reason to think otherwise. To be reliable, very important. Can't trust a person if he isn't reliable, right? You say you're going to do something, then you do it. If you can't do it, you must explain why and how it's going to be done in a different way or at a different time. Reliability is very important. Consistency. Consistency is also very important. Being consistent allows the situation to be calm and relaxed. When, you know, we do something in a certain manner, if you have a routine, first you do this, then you do that, then you do the other thing, it allows the person to feel confident that he knows what's coming and what's to expect and not to be anxious about what's going to be. This is very important. And also to voice, you know, what you're going to be doing and how things are going to be played out. And of course, commitment. Commitment is very important. More ingredients of trust, willingness to be vulnerable. I think that, you know, when we are vulnerable and in a situation with others, then that provokes them to trust us because they know that we also have our soft spots, and they're revealing their soft spots to us, soft, you know, being vulnerable. And so that's how people are. Yes, if we're honest and open, then being vulnerable is part of a relationship. A sense of security, the trust recipients will meet expectations, very important, right? Goodwill, a belief that a recipient of trust will protect the well-being of the trust giver. Also very important, okay. Reliability, a connection between predictability and goodwill. I think it's important to voice what you're going to be doing at any given time, yes, to give a person the confidence that he hears and he knows what to expect. This always helps people in a situation of, you know, of not being sure of what's happening, especially in the beginning, especially if they can't yet be completely trustworthy of you, knowing what their routine is, what their needs are, and so on. So you voice what you're going to do for them. And I think that helps make everyone feel more confident. Being open and transparent, very important. Like I said, to voice what you're going to do, what you're thinking, you know, what's happening in your life is always very important as well. And reciprocity, treating the other as well as you like to be treated yourself. This is very important. How to build trust and trust relationship with the patient. Effective tools. Remember that your patient has opened his most private space for you, his home. And like you, he has concerns, expectations, hopes from this relationship. Like I said, we don't know what those hopes are. They may be, you know, not in place, but very important to find out what they, you know, what they would like, what they think would happen, what would make them feel happy, and so on. And I think this is also part of being assertive. Being assertive, I think, in this kind of a situation is to ask those kinds of questions. What do you expect me to do? How do you expect me to behave? What would make you feel better? Yes, all of those things are very important. Give trust and trust yourself. Trust the patient and trust the process of getting to know each other. If you trust the others, they will trust you. Always tell the truth. This is very obvious, even if it's unpleasant, if something breaks, if you make a mistake, if you forgot something, always tell the truth, because then it can be fixed. It can be, you know, it can be taken care of. Otherwise, you know, have a problem with building trust. Always tell the truth. If something bothers you, don't keep it inside. Try to talk about it, okay? Otherwise, it could not be resolved. So there are 4 steps in creating the caregiving alliance. The caregiving alliance consists of 3 essential components. Agreeing on the caregiving tasks, what it is that you need to do. Agreeing on the goals of the care, okay? What are the goals? What do you want to achieve? And developing a personal relationship consisting of mutual positive feelings, trust, and good communication. This kind of sums it all up. The caregiving alliance is usually determined at the beginning of the relationship between the caregiver and the patient, and continues and constitutes a primary infrastructure for the relationship between them. Such a contract gives stability to the caregiving relationship and a sense of mutual responsibility and partnership. I think this is very important, to feel that you are a partner, okay? That you're both partners in the same kind of a deal. And the deal is to make things good for your client. He gives his part and you give your part, okay? It's a partnership. And I think this is a very nice way to speak about the relationship. And you have common goals. And of course, you have to take into account social and cultural components. Part of the caregiving alliance is to take into consideration social and cultural components. So again, even though you are in Israel and the language that most people speak here is Hebrew, but not only, like I said before, Israel is a country of immigrants, and most of your clients being elderly, perhaps, you know, most of them, Hebrew is not their main language. Perhaps they speak another language. And so you may find yourself learning more than one language, perhaps Persian or Moroccan. Sometimes people, when they are disabled or elderly or become in some way disabled, they they stop speaking the language that is in the cultural situation, and they go back to their primary language. And so you may have to learn a few words in maybe a different language, whatever it is that they're communicating best with. And of course, you might need the assistance of other family members in order to understand. Yes, very multicultural society that we live in. And so each family is very different. And a rule of thumb is to learn just what that client needs and how he communicates best. You and your patient come from different cultures and you have different languages. lifestyle, customs, preferences, and beliefs. I also want to say that it's not just the customs and lifestyles, but also there's the age and energy gap, and and the pace at which you think and live and do things, and you must be sensitive and minded to the pace and that your client is living in. Okay, not to cause stress by the fact that you'd like to do things quickly and get your job done, and then perhaps be free to do other things. But if they have a different kind of a pace, and usually disabled elderly people have a slow pace in the way they expect things to be done, the way they bathe, the way they walk, the way they dress. Very important to get into their pace, into their rhythm. It's okay for you to express your preferences and to keep your customs, but it's better to talk about it with your patient and reach an agreement. Try to take into account the culture, values, customs, traditions of your patient. This includes food preferences, daily routine, and habits. I want to stress the fact that, again, being more assertive in the sense of your client's routine. Once you learn the routine that is comfortable for him, I highly recommend that you find out, how the family shares information about the client's well-being and what's happening, and be part of that. If they, want maybe to have a new WhatsApp group for you to be in, and to give a sort of small report. We had a good day, we had a busy day, we did this, we did that. I think that, when you are part of taking charge and building a confidence in the family that you're doing a good job, is also to report to them. And today, everybody, uses the media and WhatsApp or whatever, and this is very acceptable. And I think if you initiate it, you'll see that you'll be very much appreciated. So again, I invite you to be proactive and, sharing your thoughts and feelings or questions. What do you think is the most complex step in building a relationship? What do you think is the easiest way to do it? And do you have any concerns about any of those communications? And we can always improve, and you must first and always smile. So again, anything on chat, Margarita, or someone else like to speak up?
Nothing on chat yet.
Okay. So Paul, what do you think? Have you any, oh, she's calling on me, how awful. Okay, take a deep breath and share something with us, please.
For me, ma'am, I guess I cannot relate it to the elderly because my patient is a teenager, 16-year-old boy. So we were exchanging, we're getting to know each other since I'm in the Philippines. So our way of communication is within Facebook. So we're chatting each other, exchanging of thoughts, ask what is your favorites, just like that.
Okay, so you have a different kind of an experience waiting for me, waiting for you, sorry, a 16-year-old young man. Okay, and obviously he's disabled and needs your help. So the energy thing is not about you. Your energy is going to be appreciated and okay, and matched evenly probably. And okay. Anyone else like to share thoughts, questions?
Mike, maybe?
Now we want the men to come forward.
Yeah.
Are you with us?
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
I think building rapport is the most crucial stage between the caregiver and the patient. Because when you already build the trust, so it encompasses all. So respect will follow and everything will follow. That's
Okay.
all. Thank you.
Okay. Have you had an experience in a different country in this kind of work before? Coming in contact with people that speak a different language in your work situation?
Yes, ma'am. I work for South Korea for almost 5 years.
Okay. In what capacity?
Since South Korea is a multicultural family, we have a different nationality there. So, as a healthcare provider, so you must
For a
study
Korean
and learn
family.
their yes
Okay.
different languages. So you must invest too much respect since you are working in a different country. At the same
Mm-hmm.
time, you must invest more patience because you need you should need more patient to those patients who are not patient. That's all.
Okay. So if I understood correctly, you needed to have a great deal of attention, not just to the patient, but to also the other people in the family. Yes? Did I understand correctly what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you learn Korean?
Yes, ma'am.
Ah, good. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else like to say something or ask a question, or this is an opportunity to voice your thoughts and
Annalisa, maybe? No?
Okay. So learning a new language, I highly recommend using a notebook and 5 new words a day, at least. Yes. Is that how you did it, Mike? 5 words a day, at least. And allow your client to be, to be in partnership with you and to teach you. Hopefully that they will be able to do that. Okay.
Well,
Anyone
nothing
else?
on the chat yet.
Anath, I didn't hear what you said.
Nothing on the chat yet.
Okay.
Melissa, maybe? All right, so I guess we can continue.
Okay. So that kind of concludes our presentation for today. And I hope that this in-between time that we, we are having the opportunity to connect with each other during this time has also had an opportunity for you to make friends and, build energy for the task at hand. That's going to be, your future for the next couple of months, few months actually. And that's it for me. Anyone else like to comment or share something? Margareta?
Yeah,
Jacob?
I will add one thing related to the communication styles that you discussed in the first part of this session. And you related later to the cultural part. And I think it is important also for us maybe to mention, we started this conversation on Friday related to specifics and nuances of Israeli culture. And with this context, how it might affect communication style or your interpretation to that. So I think it would be worth to, and we'll remind you through the program at this point. But in Israel, the people, first of all, prefer and communicate in very assertive style. And for other cultures, people coming from abroad, it often looks like even aggressive style, because people are very loud and very emotional while they're speaking. But in fact, they just, that's the way they communicate. They will be just very loud, very expressive. They will talk with their hands and with their bodies. And they can also even touch each other. But it's just important to draw your attention for one thing, and for another thing, for you not to be misinterpreted and sad, because you might use to some other ways of communication also, maybe to try to get used to it to some extent. Yeah, that would be my addition to the session that Sarah presented.
Thank you very much. Yaakov, anything else you'd like to say?
I just want to say that professional terms, kind of theories, how do we behave, and what are our positions toward the person who needs our care. But I just want to strengthen one point, and it is your personality. You come with what you have, you come with what you had in your past, and all this experience. And of course, I'm giving also credit to all what you have learned. And with that, you come and behave normally, naturally, and propose yourself when it is needed, be aside when it is not needed. That I'm sure that you have all these characteristics and all this behavior in yourself. And I suggest that with this, you go in and that will build the trust, a deep trust between you and the person you give your care. So in that, I will wish you a very good luck and success with all what you have in hands.
Thank you, Yaakov. Yes, I agree. I think everyone that has come this far to be part of the caregiving community here in Israel must already have what he needs in order to, to be a good caregiver. And from the short comments that we've heard, personality is our major tool in our toolbox. So we meet again tomorrow, Margareta?
Yes, tomorrow.
For our final presentation and session. And do you want to say something about what will happen tomorrow?
Yeah, Anat will share with us.
Hello. Just a second.
So I'll start and you said, okay? Yeah. So we shared with you already a few recordings, not a few, and there is a lot of information already. So it's still okay that you didn't remember everything yet, and it's also okay if you won't remember everything by the end of this week. We don't have tests afterwards. Those recordings are for you. You also have access whenever this part of the program first week is over, but you still have an access and you can go back and watch it or rewatch it. We'll still share with you something else. We'll share with you another recording in how you can contact and communicate with call center, and we'll also explain how it works. Important for you to just understand this mechanism and how it can assist you. And we'll also meet online tomorrow. What Sarah called final, but it's not final for the program, but final for the sessions on the topic of relationship between caregiver and a client, elderly or person who needs basically your care. We also will try to invite for a second part a caregiver, somebody who also arrived from Philippines, unfortunately not under bilateral agreement because it's very recent, as you know, but also somebody who came from the same country as you when she went through the experience and points that you are going to. And you can also ask questions that you might have. So you can already start to think about things that you would like to ask. Yeah, and we'll share with you timing and all the details afterwards. And also we'll meet you afterwards on Tuesday, but we'll give you details on that tomorrow.
Okay.
So soon I will send you some links and the recording. Like Margarita said, we'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. Have a good evening, everyone.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Anak.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello. Bye.
Thank you po.
Daraba.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.